For some in court, this was a moment decades in the making.
I feel like I'm dreaming. Can you pinch me?
For Canadian Andrea Constant, the only one of the more than 60 women to see her accusations against Cosby go to court, this was victory.
Bill Cosby, 3 words for you. Guilty, guilty, guilty!
The other accusers celebrated the decision.
After all is said and done, women were finally believed, and we thank the jury so much for that.
Now let me get this straight.
It's been a long fall for the once beloved comedian, who is best known for breaking racial barriers in television.
And people don't believe, people think I'm making it up.
When a comedian called Cosby a rapist in 2014, long dormant accusations came to the surface. Stories of sexual assault going back to the 60s. But with the statute of limitations passed on many, only Andrea Constant ended up in court. At the first trial last year, the jury deliberated for 5 days, but couldn't reach a decision. Since then, the Me Too movement has taken hold, an era of heightened awareness of sexual harassment and assault that has brought down major names in politics and entertainment. Cosby becomes the first to be punished in a criminal court and the court of public opinion.
We are vindicated, we are validated, and we are now part of the tsunami of women's power and justice. We are not shutting up and we're not going away. Get over it.
Cosby showed little emotion as the verdict was read. Later, he called the district attorney an asshole in court. He was freed on bail, despite the outburst.
We don't think Mr. Cosby is guilty of anything, and the fight is not over. Thank you.
Are you going to appeal, sir?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, very strongly.
Constant didn't speak after the verdict, as her lawyer praised her courage.
I am so happy today that I can say that although justice was delayed, it was not denied.
Justice, the DA promised, that will come no matter how much money or power the accused has, that victims will be heard.
We really know today who was behind that act, who the real Bill Cosby was.
His message that while Bill Cosby may be the first big name convicted in the Me Too era, he won't be the last. Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, New York.
As Stephen said, obviously today was hugely emotional for everyone involved in the Cosby saga and the Me Too movement, for that matter. Let's hear a little more from 2 of the women in that courtroom today, longtime Cosby accuser Lily Bernard and lawyer Gloria Allred.
Women are believed, and not only on #MeToo, but in a court of law where they were under oath, where they testified truthfully, where they were attacked, where they were smeared, where they were denigrated.
Last year, when I was sitting in the courtroom of the first trial and the verdict was hung, I left with such a tremendous sense of disappointment. And it became evident to me that the justice system is light years behind modern culture. But today, this jury has shown that what the Me Too movement is saying is that women are worthy of being believed.
It is hard to overstate the significance of today's guilty verdict. Consider these dozens of women who shared their stories with New York Magazine a few years ago. They make up just half of the number of women who accuse Cosby of sexual assault, some going all the way back to the 1960s. Joining me now for a closer look at the Canadian at the center of this case is Diana Moskovitz, a senior editor at Deadspin, who joins me tonight from Norristown, Pennsylvania. Diana, let's talk about Andrea Constant and the significance of this woman in this case. What can you tell us about her?
She really deserves so much credit. She was the first person to go to law enforcement and say Bill Cosby had drugged and sexually assaulted her. And without her, we have no way of knowing if more women would have come forward or not.
So if she started this ball moving, if you will, how do you think things have changed from when that started? The first allegation, the first trial, and then the second one?
A lot has changed. Obviously, one of the big changes is that now we had a district attorney who felt that this was a case that could be brought, that could be won. We're now in a world that is post Harvey Weinstein, post Me Too, and I think you really see those changes, especially in terms of the jury. It's a jury of your peers, and that means our peers, Bill Cosby's peers, came together and said, there's enough evidence to convict you. And again, when she first came forward, the DA would not even bring the case.
I know that the defense attorney in closing arguments referenced in a subtle way the Me Too movement and talked about how the jury shouldn't be influenced by, I think she used the word mob rule. Clearly that did not resonate. What was your sense of how the jurors took that argument?
Throughout the whole case, they seemed to be taking it very seriously. This was a very studious jury. They were paying attention. They took a lot of notes. There was one moment where the court forgot to give them their notebooks back, and they actually stopped and said, hey, where are our notebooks? We need to keep taking notes. So they paid vigorous attention, and I think that, one thing I take away from this is that I wonder what this says to defense attorneys, that this playbook you have where you just try to shame these women, where you do character assassination, where you just bring up how many men that they've slept with as a way to discredit them. Does that still work? Because this jury saw all of that and said, no, this does not discredit these witnesses, and we believe them.
So obviously, Mr. Cosby's lawyer said today that they plan to appeal. But regardless of that, do you think that this verdict today will have a lasting impact on how these kinds of cases go forward? You referenced it there, but do you think it's going to change things in some way?
I do. It's hard to say, right? Because none of us can predict the future. But I do think that, to district attorneys, it says you can bring these cases and you can win these cases. I think to defense lawyers, it says, hey, that playbook you used, it might not be working anymore, and I know the district attorney here, Kevin Steele, he talked a lot in his press conference about wanting this to show victims, come to us, we will believe you. We'll see if this gets recreated, across the country, or if, we'll see if it's a fluke. I know a lot of people here think hopefully not.
Okay, Diana Moskovitz, thank you for giving us your perspective from there tonight. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
So now what happens to Cosby? Despite the guilty verdict and the prosecution's pitch to have his bail revoked, he won't find himself in a cell just yet. He's allowed to go home, but was told to stay there. Cosby was forced to surrender his passport and ordered not to leave Pennsylvania. He'll also be fitted with a GPS tracker until his sentencing hearing, which hasn't been scheduled yet.